Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to In Time. My name is Nicholas Lamar Soutter, and with me, as always, is Ansgar Odinson.
Hey, everybody.
And just want to, yeah, okay, I just want to make sure the sound was going through. I've been having sound problems on every stream I've done today, and I figured it would be a shame if this was somehow an exception.
Well,
Uh,
according to the levels that I'm seeing here, you actually are transmitting your voice to the people on the internet.
aren't they lucky? All right. Well, thank you. One piece of good news before we get into the some what has to be done for the rest of the hopefully reasonably short discussion today. But one piece of good news, we have exceeded 1,000 subs, which is a yeah, that is a extraordinarily important barrier on YouTube for a number of reasons, and monetization in particular. But it's a important milestone. We sincerely appreciate all of you who have helped us to that, especially on the mad rush yesterday, as people were like 9,000 or 998, 999, and everybody was
Oh man,
so.
that
It
show
was
for me was a huge thing because I've been wanting to talk to King Crocoduck for a long time, and to get to bust that barrier while we had King Crocoduck on the show, that was more than awesome.
well, and we also broke the 4,000 watch barriers, which is the other, and we broke that by 16 hours on that one shot, and that was so we broke simultaneous. That's if I were religious, I'd think that it's a sign. It's a sign. But thank you to everybody who has subscribed. Thank you very much to our patrons. We have a Patreon meeting. We normally do Patreon meetings at the first of every month, and we did the last one just like a week ago. But first of the month, we're going to do another one. We look forward to seeing all our patrons there. And if you want to support this channel, we would really appreciate it. And please join us. We're still a new channel, but we are very proud of the work that we've done, and we look forward to continuing to improve. So as we're dedicated to doing. I can see already loads of questions on the GDC side. I'll get into what has happened over the last really 3 days in regards to the non sequitur situation. By the way, super chats, if you want to do any super chats, the link should be at the top of the description. Otherwise, we'll just try to get to the chats as we catch them. And we got people, we are simulcasting to the GDC and to the channel in time. So, and if you want to catch other shows like this in the future, you can go to our channel In Time Show on YouTube and subscribe there. So we've been following Non Sequitur since it was one of our first episodes, and we covered it. Initially, we covered it from the day Steve and Kyle met all the way through to the day before that episode. We then did an update on what had happened since then, and this is now our second update on it. And really, I think probably our last significant update. For the most part, for all intents and purposes, this is over, and it's amazing. There's this huge relief. I think there's going to be a huge decompression. Steve McRae went onto his channel and decompressed on the channel, including voicing opinions that he had previously not really felt he was could voice without maybe getting hit for slander, libel, or whatever else. And he is not nearly as concerned about that now. So what has happened is this, and it is actually what we had said we had thought probably would happen and was a worst case scenario we were hoping wouldn't, but we acknowledged was really what it looked like to us and had for some time, which was that Kyle would default on the lawsuit. Steve McRae filed a lawsuit in North Carolina. It went to a superior court, the complex mandatory complex business court, and in that court, they had 7 complaints against Kyle. He was served on August 30th. He had 30 days to reply. That ended September 30th, which would have been this Monday. Now, if you don't reply, what that tells a court is, first of all, it's a big FU to the court, which is probably something you don't want to do to people who have control over your life. Now, one of the things we did cover last time was that Kyle has been in court several times before, and he has a history of defaults. He had 5 previous failures to appear for everything from misdemeanors to felony charges. So this appears to have been a pattern, and we believed he probably did not have a lawyer, in which case he was just going to let the clock expire and probably was not taking it seriously. We had urged him and those around him to tell him that this was serious because this could actually have severe complications. My suspicion is he's not aware of how serious this could be, but it's done. The deadline has come and went. It tells the court, hey, it's a bit of an FU, but it's sort of a legal understanding. What it means is you do not contest any of the charges. That's it. You're
Um,
basically saying, I don't disagree. Yes.
quick question. So judges are capable and will potentially judge more harshly against you because they perceive it as an FU to the court.
I think they can. I think they judges will always consider your past experience with the law. That includes past criminal records, and that includes your past experience with that court. Now, technically, they're not supposed to do that, but they're human beings, and frankly, realistically, it's not necessarily a bad idea to do that if you are, let's take a look at this particular case. You have a judge who has on one side Steve, who says, this guy has screwed me over. He kept ignoring all my requests for the books. He kept ignoring my requests to talk to a lawyer, to talk to an accountant, to get all this stuff done, all the basic business stuff he ignored. And then you're looking at Kyle Curtis, who, where's Kyle?
Right.
Huh? Um, that you take one look at Steve and you say, I think I understand your problem. Um, so I think, yeah, they certainly do in some cases take attitude. We'll talk. I've got some stories.
Um,
Um,
AC
yes.
Casilla has I think, an important question. Says Nicholas sounds like he is knowledgeable about the law. Does he have a legal background of some kind? Honest question.
Oh
I
no,
th-
no, fair question. So I actually, and you can see right there, I was the so I have I've well, okay. Aside from the fact that yes, I have my BA was in philosophy, but it was in philosophy of law. My father was a criminal defense attorney, and I actually got to work extensively, not extensively. I got to work in his office. I got to understand a lot of his cases. Brother-in-law is a lawyer. 4 or 5 uncles are lawyers. I am also a Massachusetts bar recognized coach for the Massachusetts mock trial program. I teach law. That there was awarded to me for excellence in coaching for mock trial. Our team on our first year out ranked 12th out of 255 um, teams in Massachusetts. I'm not a lawyer, and I try to be very careful and make sure that people are aware I'm not a lawyer. But because of my association with the Mass Bar, because I teach law, and because more than half the male members of my family are lawyers, I have access to a lot of lawyers. And so we actually consulted 3 different lawyers for this case. And before going on air, I have spoken with a lawyer, either one registered in to practice bar in North Carolina, or one retired lawyer that is a former business accountant as well, CPA, and a general practitioner here in Massachusetts. I know all of who have agreed to fortunately, donate their time to me, because I've spent all my life around the law and lawyers. I can speak the jargon, same vernacular, and I can engage with them and usually understand where it's going and what it is. I don't have the training, so there's no way. That's why I talk to lawyers. We have several legal consults who are donating their time to the In Time show. I hash it out with them. I understand what it is, and then I come on here and discuss it with you guys. So good, very good question. So Kyle has defaulted. Now, what that means is he didn't show up. That tells them that he's not disagreeing. He does not contest the charges. That is extraordinarily serious. That means Steve has, for all intents and purposes, won. He filed a lawsuit. It wasn't contested. It's over. I get asked this a lot. Well, can Kyle now contest and say, oh, well, hey, wait a minute, I didn't realize this was serious? Well, for the most part, no. There's a couple of rare circumstances he can. The huge exceptional situations I'll hit just for the sake of argument. For the most part, no, because that's why he was given 30 days. And if he needed an extension, he goes in during that 30 days and say, hey, look, I can't deal with this now. I want an extension. He can even do that without a lawyer if he wants to, but he didn't even have his lawyer do that. He's been telling people for 6 months that he has a lawyer representing him, and that lawyer didn't walk into this court and say, can we get an extension? The only way courts across this country are backlogged. They are incapable of getting all the cases processed that they need to process. They don't. If you sit there and blow them off and then say, oh, I'm ready to take it seriously now, you're going to find what you have to say falling on deaf ears. The only possible thing he could really do is say that there's been a failure of the court. A, he didn't get proper service. He didn't know that he was being sued, any number of things. Problem is, the service was delivered by a sheriff's department. We showed that letter. We have that letter. That was linked in one of our previous videos. We know he's been served. He's going to have a hard time saying he wasn't served, since he walked into a Discord and admitted not only that he had been served, but that he was countersuing back. So he's going to have a lot of problems with any significant and I had one or two other questions that I think I may have missed, so people may need to ask them again if I missed them. Anyways, he's going to have a hard time with any of the objections, but they have to sort of be meta objections. They have to be objections that systematically something went wrong. He has had his chance. He chose not to take advantage of it. You don't get another whack at the apple, bite at the pinata. I don't know. At any rate, um,
I
I'm
think you
glad you
might
asked, and
have
I
those
did.
a little, just
Yeah,
a
yeah,
little
yeah, yeah, yeah.
off.
So, what happens now? Very formal. Just really in this case, it is a formality, which is they have basically rendered a formal request for a summary judgment, which is to say, okay, that's it. He's not here. We won. We want that officially recognized. That's probably not going to take too long. In fact, the request comes with the form for the judge already filled out. All he's got to do is sign it. 95% of the time, that's just boom, done. There's no, he didn't show. It's done. There's no, he hasn't contested it, and it doesn't look like he's going to contest it. So they're going to get a summary judgment. At that point, the judge decides, what does Steve get in this matter? He's asked for a number of things. Now, it depends on how you break down what he's been asking for, but at a minimum, ostensibly, I think the chances are very high he's going to be awarded $30,000. Why? That is his estimation of what's in the books. Now, Ansgar, you can anticipate, I would imagine, one objection Kyle might have to that.
I can anticipate a few things. One of which being he has no way of knowing what actually the channel made because he hasn't shown him the books.
Exactly. Well, that's so what Kyle could say is, well, we didn't make enough money. I'm not going to pay $30,000. We only made 10.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the problem. Kyle was given an opportunity and in fact demanded that he show the books.
Right.
He hasn't done that. So at this point, he has not in any way contested Steve's assessment of how much the channel may have made. So there's no real way for Kyle to contest it at this point, and he can't go back and say that was for trial, which hasn't happened because Kyle didn't even bother with his reply to the judge. They haven't even had the trial yet. This is the most preliminary thing, and Kyle didn't even give a response. So it's it. That's it. It's done. So the judge is going to have to figure out. At a minimum, it's probably going to be $30,000 in North Carolina. If there is a financial malfeasance of some kind that has to do with a business malfeasance, you can be awarded triple damages. That's $90,000, assuming the judge does it. I don't know how often it's done in North Carolina. I think it's done reasonably often, but I think that you do sometimes have to have that separate pitch to the lawyer, to the judge. They made that pitch. That is in their letter. So it just does he see it that way? The fact that Kyle didn't bother to show up doesn't fare well for being taken seriously that Steve shouldn't be awarded triple damages. He's also requested damages on several other fronts. Also in North Carolina, you are entitled to your legal fees back. So that's $90,000 at a minimum, assuming you accept the $30,000 valuation. They also had some other penalties that they wanted Kyle to be assessed, plus the $10,000. We are looking at a fair shot of $100,000 or more in damages. Now, the other thing is, and a lot of people say, well, gee, he's just going to declare bankruptcy and done. In North Carolina, if there is an award based on abandonment of financial responsibility, which Kyle, as the one who said he was keeping the books, as the one who said he was managing all this, he was, by his own admission, in charge of the books.
Mhm.
He's the one in charge of the finances. If you have a judgment against you based on your failure to maintain your fiduciary responsibility in a business, you cannot discharge that by bankruptcy. I say again, you cannot discharge it by bankruptcy. Kyle could declare bankruptcy 16 times, and that part of the judgment is still going to be held against him. When does it get discharged? When he pays it back, and it accrues interest in that time. Yeah.
Are you saying that there's no way he can declare bankruptcy, or that it would likely fail because of this?
He can declare bankruptcy. This debt will not be discharged. So
No
if he
possible
also
way.
has, if Steve would be notified of the bankruptcy, and he actually does have to technically notify the court and say, by the way, it's Steve's responsibility to notify them. By the
Gotcha.
way, this can't be discharged. Now they'll look at it. Let's say Kyle has 20. He's got 20,000 in credit cards. He's got 30,000 in late rentals from Blockbuster Video, whatever it is. Those could still be discharged. So if he declares bankruptcy, he could still have a successful bankruptcy, and they would discharge the credit cards, the Blockbuster Video, the whole 9 yards. This would not be discharged.
I just want to point
This he
out,
would
though,
still have.
if he does
Yes.
have those debts, then he has a time machine somewhere, and he can make all that money back, and everything's good.
Well, at least 95% of the money. At any rate,
yeah.
yeah. So what he is now looking at is, at a minimum, I don't see any way Steve is going to be awarded anything short of 30,000. It's possible it's 100,000. It's possible it's more, significantly more. I doubt it's going to be much more than that,
Mhm.
but it's possible. It depends on how pissed off the judge is. It depends on the kind of judge. I don't know. They drew a judge a while back. I saw the name. I didn't look the guy up, but you oftentimes you look up the history of the judge and see how he's ruled in similar situations. I haven't done that, but at any rate, so he's looking at possibly 100,000, a percentage of, or perhaps all of which cannot be discharged. That stays with him for the rest of his life or until he pays it back. Well, gee, maybe he's just not going to pay it back. Well, a couple of problems with that, not the least of which is, again, in North Carolina, your wages can be garnished up to 25% for the rest of your life until you pay that back. This is a staggering problem. This is a staggering issue, and I think one of the things we tried to impress last time we had this discussion. This isn't a win for anybody, really. I mean, it's less of a loss for Steve. Steve would rather the show was still running the way it should have been, the way it originally was. So this is a loss for everybody. But for Kyle, and then here's the other problem, which is the chances are over 90% Steve is going to get the channel back. He has requested the channel back. The court is empowered to command Kyle to turn it over. Kyle's got two choices. He can turn it over or he can ignore the order. You want to place bets on what he's going to do?
Probably ignore the order.
Probably ignore the order. At that point, the judge can, if he wants, to order a bench warrant out for Kyle Curtis's arrest. That's happened before. That's why he, on previous failure to appears, he had bench warrants issued. And since he does have a criminal history, they take repeat offenders extremely seriously. They don't like it when you didn't learn your lesson the first time.
And that is aside from the fact that the district attorney could decide to pursue criminal charges just based on this case without him failing to appear.
That's exactly right. I don't know what the chances of that are. My thinking is the chances are reasonably small, and the reason is because it's a YouTube show.
Right.
Yes, it was fraud but especially if he pays it back, he's probably not going to care. If Kyle doesn't pay it back, that can because that you then you add um, the oh Jesus, I apologize, I've forgotten the technical term, the legal term when you ignore the judge's order.
Contempt of court, says
Yes,
Boolinator.
thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, contempt of court. Yes, thank you. Aren't you glad I'm not your lawyer? Yeah. So, um,
You're not
Kyle's
lawyer.
lawyer and
You're
I went.
lawyer adjacent.
I'm lawyer adjacent. I'm adjacent to a couple lawyers.
Yeah.
Um, well, and to be fair, I got my law degree from the same place Kyle's lawyer did. But at any rate, um, yeah, Kyle's lawyer wishes. At any rate, the inside joke for those of you who have no idea, Kyle's lawyer is a fake account. Yes, I will expose it now. A fake account on Twitter that has been trolling everybody, and it's just a hilarious
It
account.
really is.
Yeah,
I
that's
believe the same person also has the account Kyle's disappointed mother, which is ouch.
on a Twitter account. And I have to say, I think no, I'm not sure it's the same person. It's hard to tell. I will. He genius, and still has actually. I think the highest. Kyle's lawyer still has at $22, the highest super chat we've had come in. So it's just sort of like, really, Kyle's lawyer has to have the name plastered all over. Okay, okay. I guess that's my revenge. But it was a spectacular troll. At any rate, so. Uh, do I think he's going to be facing jail time on this? Let's assume he ignores all the court orders, ignores everything. I doubt he's going to face any official time. I think there's a good chance he'll get a warrant issued. The next time he gets picked up on a traffic violation, he's going to spend the night in jail. He's going to get dragged before a judge who's going to say, excuse me, we've been wanting to talk to you for a little while. Where the fuck have you been? And then he'll give whatever excuse he's got, and then they let him go. But so I don't think he's looking at jail time. I don't think he's looking at anything criminal. But it is not out of the realm of possibility by any stretch of the imagination. Which, if he had a lawyer, the lawyer would fucking tell him that.
By the way, we have an interesting question. Would a judge's order for the channel to be reassigned be acted on by YouTube regardless of Kyle?
I think what they can do is they can actually go take it to YouTube and say, we've been awarded the channel. Here you go. I don't know the circumstances. YouTube, first of all, is probably not technically required to abide by it because YouTube is headquartered in California, and they don't have to abide by anything that North Carolina says.
There have been a few
And
cases like this on YouTube, though. I know there was an interesting case of a mother and daughter, and I forget where they're from. It's been a long time, but they had something of a falling out, and someone had the keys to the YouTube channel and changed things and stuff. So I don't remember exactly how it happened, but I do remember they had to get the courts involved because YouTube basically refused to get involved themselves.
I mean, YouTube will probably, I suspect, honor the request
Mhm.
because they have no desire to really get into it. But anything short of that, they probably won't, and they're not obligated to.
Yeah.
They don't want to piss off members of the community. They don't want it to get around that they don't cooperate with courts in other states. But having said that, they also don't want to get they can't research all this stuff. So they get something that looks like it's a legit court order, that looks like it's signed by a real judge. If they don't get on the phone and make sure that it's real and they hand over the channel to the wrong person, then they get sued or they get some other, I mean, it becomes kind of
Right.
difficult for them. So they're very hesitant to act on any of these things. They'd much rather just wait until Kyle does it, which they know a court can probably force him to do. So they just wash their hands of it.
Yeah.
And this is actually a topic that I think we're going to be discussing in about 2 weeks when we have Landon Noe along, because this is going to be one of the things he's going to discuss is how they sort of try to wash their hands of any of these issues and let everybody else solve it for them, a la Walmart. So I know you'll be
Yeah.
thrilled.
Oh yeah. By the way, Kill Doggy One says you steal a car and you go to jail. Was the money not the same worth as a car? And I can kind of address that. There is in this country in general, in fact, all over the Western world, the law and legal systems have failed to keep up at the at the speed of technology. especially on the internet. And YouTube is still things like YouTube are still not taken as seriously as something like a car. And you can actually see this sort of thing all over both the legal and political landscape, where the law has it actually lawmakers, the system in which we may even write our laws is incapable of keeping up at the speed of technology. And so therein lies part of the problem.
I think that's a good. And the other problem is actually that's similarly tied to it. We're terrible at undoing laws.
Yes.
And so what happens is one reason that new laws get slowed down is because they have to account for or interact with old and previous laws that are still on the books. In let's see, in Massachusetts, it's illegal to bathe except on Sundays and with
Mhm.
a doctor's note. In Texas, you're not allowed to walk with an ice cream cone in your back pocket. Now, I have no idea what the fuck made the Texas
Here's
legislature
a good
think that
one.
was a good idea, but
In
I don't know what makes
Texas,
them think
it
anything's
is
good.
specifically illegal to shoot whales from your vehicle. From your vehicle. No drive-by whaling in Texas. Don't do it. I don't know why that needed to be a law, but it's Texas,
I
so
don't know. Well, because Texas.
right.
All right. So, yeah, I'm going to add that to the list of things on Texas that I've got. I got a list about Texas. Anyways, so long story short, I do think Steve's going to get the channel back. I think the chances of that are very, very, very high, come hell or high water. There is a chance that Kyle is going to delete the channel just for spite or anything like that. Steve has gotten a, uh, he's issued a order to, he's gotten an order to stay the property so that Kyle is actually barred from making any changes to it. In fact, if you'll notice, Kyle hasn't made any changes in 3 weeks, to the best of my knowledge. He was deleting comments prestigiously. Last time we counted, he had deleted, I think it was 1,120 some odd comments that had been deleted. Since this, I was just deleting them like crazy. That
Yeah.
seems to have stopped. If there's been a couple deleted that I didn't catch, okay, but the prodigious just wiping them out's gone. There's been no casting. There's been no nothing. Technically, he's not allowed to either cast or delete anything. Now, if he does, YouTube just dumps it all into a recycle bin. They hold on to a channel for, it'll be quote deleted, but it'll still be recoverable for a minimum of 30 days. I would imagine 90 days. I don't know. I don't work at YouTube, but for at least 30 days, it will be, precisely for this kind of reason. Now, YouTube will, if they are told that there is a court in which this is at issue, they'll hold on to the data. And once the court decides, they'll say, okay, it's yours, just do with it what you will. So the channel's not going to get deleted. It's not going anywhere. Steve was actually had a lot of foresight they actually already, in fact, informed Kyle that they gave him, they said that since this was primarily what was at issue in the case, until the case was decided, he was barred from deleting it or acting on it negatively in any way. Now that there's essentially going to be a finding of default here, anything he does to it, I think Steve's going to get the channel back. It's just now a question of how difficult Kyle wants to make it. So, yes, please.
I'm curious, is that how confident and we also have a super chat to read, but how confident are you that he will get the channel? Like, if you had to make a projection, is it really like 95? Is it 99? Is it pretty much guaranteed?
I'm at 90%. I'm at 90% or over chance he's going to get
Okay.
it back. The judge doesn't have to do it.
Uh,
That hasn't been decided, but Steve has won the case. That's done, with the exception of, unless Kyle pulls out of his pocket, I wasn't served or something like that, none of which he can do. He's locked
right.
himself in on all the options. There is no way that this ends in anything but a default. So at this point, the judge can do whatever he wants, but actually, the judge would be less likely to pay Steve back what he's owed, which is the 30,000, and just give Steve back the property, because the judge still there's no evidence for how much the money is, and if the judge decides I don't want to sort it out, it's a couple of kids on YouTube. Admittedly, you know, calling Steve a kid may be one hell of a stretch. But, you know, a judge who doesn't know what YouTube is, and it's just like, okay, it's a bunch of
Yeah.
kids who are broadcasting their lives on I don't care, but you want the channel back, it's yours, done. Stranger things than that have happened, but stranger than him not getting the channel back, that's pretty rare. So my guess is, at a minimum, he gets the channel back. My guess is I'm about 80% that he's going to get 30,000 or more.
Mhm.
I'm about 50% on that he's going to get 100,000.
Okay.
Maybe a little less. I'm about
That's getting a
40%,
little
45.
more. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so Quiesa, I believe is how it said,
Yep.
donated $10 on Streamlabs. Thank you very much. Says Steve says he prefers handshakes, God bless him, but I believe having a clearly defined contract is actually the best way to maintain a healthy partnership between friends. Temptation affects even the best of friends.
It's not just temptation. Here's the thing, first of all, things change as time progresses. As time progresses, you forget what it was that got you into the partner in the ship in the first place. You forget, for example, I think Kyle was so eager to start this. Of course, he was willing to give half.
Hmm.
He was absolutely. But then once it's successful, he's like, well, now, really, I could have found anyone who would have done it. I could have. He starts coming up with the post hoc excuses and post hoc rationalizations, and then all of a sudden, it's sort of like, well, I do all this work, and let's assume that that's what he really believed. Now all of a sudden, because there isn't a contract, it's got nothing to do with how honest he is in that particular case. And I'm not calling Kyle honest, but wow. Normally you sit there and say, I'm not calling you a liar. In this case, I'm like, I'm not calling him honest. But uh, I'm not saying he's honest, but what I am saying is, even if he is honest, that happens to even the most honest of people. And the other thing that happens, and this is one reason you just have to have a contract, and Steve's going to talk about another channel, is like, it has to be with someone I can do a handshake deal with. And the problem is this, in my view, which is, and this is the other big, in a contract, 30% of it or less has to do with the money. 30% or less has to do with the money. The rest has to do with, what do we do if one person bails and the other one sticks around? What happens if one person is going to be sick for 6 months and we have to replace them? Does the other person get that money? Does the replacement get the? What happens if? And just any number of contingencies that other people haven't thought of, and then also to understand roles, so that if one person feels like, okay, I don't like how you're doing your role, I'm just going to start doing it. I'm going to start to do that role too, and that role too, and that role. Jesus Christ, you're not doing any of your work. What's going on?
Yeah.
Well, if you have a contract that defines whose job is what and what the expectations are, and the expectations change, you cannot help it. And memories change. You can't help that either. Happens to everybody. The contract is critical, I think, to that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's unwise to do anything without the contract. And the other thing is, though, and here's the thing that I think people are ignoring, was actually there kind of was a contract, because there were multiple emails. And this is the other thing, and this gets into the second half of this that I think we need to discuss, which is sort of what I think this tells us about what's been going on for quite some time. Um, Steve McRae has been showing some more of the information that he has been holding very close to the chest up until now, including information on discussions that he had with Kyle Curtis, where Kyle said 50-50 partner, all this other stuff. I have seen these emails. I have read them. It is clear, crystal clear to anybody reading them, that Kyle had agreed to a 50-50 partnership, not a at will, not anything. And that is, as Steve likes to call it, in perpetuity. It is
Mhm.
clear that was agreed to. Kyle went so far as to draft. In fact, I believe I printed it out. Draft, um, essentially what I usually think of as a DBA, or a fictitious business name, DBA, doing business as, document, uh, in order for business to be done as non sequitur. Now, it looks like he didn't file that document, but he did say, okay, Steve, here's the document. We're both co-owners. By the way, I signed for you, which got very confusing because I'm trying to read these emails. And this is where, as I was reading it, what I saw in my mind was a deliberate attempt to obfuscate, where Steve would say, wait, how can you sign for me? Oh, well, I forget what it wasn't like a virtual signature. I forget what it was he said, but he used some really bizarre language. It's just, wait, no, that doesn't make any sense. Oh, I already submitted it. Wait, how can you sign? You can't put a business document and submit it to the court with somebody else's signature. But he does a lot of doublespeak. And I think we've seen some of this recently, but to read it in these, especially sort of after the fact, a lot of these emails did not age well. To read after the fact and to see him really dodging the question of how the business is being formed and made, but at every turn in writing saying we're
Yeah.
50-50 partners, period. So first of all, what this gets to is what you and I had started to talk about last time, and I think it's very unfortunate, but I think we've been very careful. I've had my own personal opinions, and I've been telling them to people privately, and I've been saying in the back, I don't think he has a lawyer, and I challenge since the day this happened, stream after stream after stream. It's been 12, 15, 30, 45 days since this started, and Kyle's attorney has not reached out to Steve. That is malpractice in any state in the union. That's because Steve is destroying the channel. They were hemorrhaging subs. All you got to do is call them up and say, hey, listen, if you keep quiet, we'll work something out. You keep talking and you destroy the channel, what are you going to get left? So let's work on this. And that's what everybody does. That wasn't done.
Yeah.
So I had zero doubt in my mind there was no attorney, but I couldn't prove it. It was just experience. It was, again, having been around lawyers my entire life, and I was just like, oh my God. And then asking lawyers, just asking lawyer after lawyer, and they're like, yeah, that's insane. If he has a lawyer, he should sue the guy.
Because
Get all the money back from the lawyer.
I'm a complete layman, and I know the first thing a lawyer's gonna do, their primary job is to protect the business asset. That is,
to protect the client, and the business asset is, in your mind, that's the client's. And even if you have to tell the other guy, like, hey, you want it back, great, keep your mouth shut so you can so there's something to get back. There are ways to frame it. The fact that this didn't happen in 48 hours was the biggest alarm bells. And then I was in on a Patreon chat where he said, yes, there's a lawyer. That lawyer is going to be contacting Steve, which of course never happened 150 days ago now.
Yeah.
But the way he said it, there was just something about, I was like, I've heard that. I've had people threaten to sue me way more times than I care to it. Jesus, at least 24. At least 24. And I can tell right off the bat who's got an attorney and who doesn't. The ones who have an attorney to talk about it differently. It's like, he doesn't have a lawyer. I know for a fact he doesn't have a lawyer. Now, I'm not going to say that in general on this show because that's libel.
But now you know.
Actually, it's not libel. But now there's no way. There is no way. The fact of the matter is that a lawyer wouldn't. And we already kind of knew when he replied to an official demand letter from an officer of the court, and he replies on his YouTube channel with on a comment, a pinned comment.
Yeah, that's.
Oh. Yeah.
We actually have a couple comments and a question here that I think are important. Matthew McKinnon asks in time, do you guys think Kyle will pay anything? He's unemployed with zero assets. It seems he could hold on to the debt and do nothing. And then we have real quick, you can address both. One Nerd Versus says, I'm in business with my family, and we have articles of incorporation and everything. It has nothing to do with the money. It's mainly so that we all remember our responsibilities and get what we're paid for.
I think that's a really good. I think he's got it. I will. Well, let me answer the money, then I'll get back to the sort of unpleasant part of this, but that I think we have to say. But nonetheless, so as to the money, I think it depends. I think what's going to happen is I think Kyle's going to default on all of this. That's the pattern, just default on all of it. If he gets a job, actually that job can pay him without taking any garnishment, because they aren't required in most states. Actually, I'm not sure if North Carolina this is true. North Carolina is a little unique when it comes to businesses, but in most states, if you get a job and your wages are supposed to be garnished, it's actually the responsibility of the plaintiff to notify your business and have them do it. Now they're required to do it once they're notified, but you have to notify them. The court doesn't chase people around. The court doesn't consider this their responsibility. That's your job. My suspicion is North Carolina is the same way. So Steve would have to find when Kyle gets a job and then notify that job, and then he gets 25% of the wages. As long as he's willing to do that, he'll get up to 25% of whatever Kyle earns. But Kyle can do a tremendous amount of work under the table. So my guess is he cozies up with somebody, at least for a few months, figures out what his next strategy is going to be, and then tries to get a job under the table, and essentially does roughly the same thing again, because unfortunately, this is a pattern with him of finding less than scrupulous ways of dealing with things. I think that's where it's gonna end. But the long and the short of this is, I think this is so. First of all, he walked into a Discord about a week ago. Walked into the Non-Sequitur Discord, and I asked him in that Discord point blank. I said, first of all, you're being sued by Steve McRae in a North Carolina court. You have a limited amount of time left. A, do you have an attorney? And B, do you plan on responding? His answer was, yes, I have an attorney. In short, his answer was, yes, I have an attorney. And his answer was also, I, in fact, have already counterclaimed against, I have replied already. It's a counterclaim for one thing that he had mentioned earlier, which was that he had been sending all of the video of Steve ever saying anything bad about Kyle, which is a good deal of video, to his lawyer, who is, by the way, going to be charging him $300 an hour just to go through the thing. So nobody does that. Nobody does that. You can't do it. Nobody in the right mind would do that.
Right.
And he says, oh, my lawyer's going through and that's another way he's got no lawyers. Like, no, what you would do is you'd go through, you'd find the clips just where he says it, and you'd send those to the lawyer to the minimum, but at $300 an hour, you're not sending him the videos. It's going to be 10 times the value of NonSeq already. Kyle's paid his attorney for the videos on. But the other thing he said on this Discord, and I'm just sitting there going, wow, he said, and we are suing Steve for all the super chats that we got that were saying negative stuff about us.
So people paid you to say mean things about you. It's paid you to say mean things about you, and you're going to sue. And other people said these things, and you're going to sue Steve. Right? Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. That sounds like a defense. That sounds like something a lawyer would draft up. Yeah, sure.
But we can test that theory. So what we should do is, if anybody here wants to drop a $50 super chat and say something bad about me, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll talk to his family and see if there's a lawyer willing to take that case.
Well, no, I think what's going to happen is I'm just going to sit there and say, you can say mean things about me. I'll take the $50. I don't understand where Kyle's defense. But there's only one way to find out. You can, for $50, you can say whatever you want.
True. If you want to give us a super chat and say this is the ugliest face you've ever seen and the dumbest hat you've ever seen, I will probably say thank you for the $50.
Yeah.
We do have a couple more quick comments. Dave Thompson.
I want to finish with this one thread on this, because I want to get through this point, because it's what we have here at this point was, so we know he lied in the Discord when he said that he had replied, because he didn't do it.
Right.
It is by this point beyond any preponderance of the evidence, beyond any reasonable doubt in my mind, that he has never had an attorney at all throughout this entire thing, because no attorney would allow him to default. The attorney could just drop a letter and say, we need an extension. None of it. And we've already known it, but we had to dance around the issue. Now, this isn't, so he lied when he said, and he's been saying that to his friends, to his patrons, to his subs. I have an attorney. He doesn't have one. Now, why would he lie about that? Because he wants people to think he's taking this seriously.
Yeah.
He wasn't. He'd rather lie. And we already know he lied to Boole. He lied about the SEO to Steve. He lied to Boole. Then when he had to come clean with Boole, he asked Boole to lie to Steve, which Boole refused to do. Then when Boole said that he had been asked to lie, Kyle lied and said he hadn't. And then finally, when it was absolutely irrefutable, Kyle said, okay, yeah, I asked him to lie. I shouldn't have. But and then when you take a look at that, I'm sorry, I don't think he has a CPA either. And that may sound like that's piling on, but he told Steve he had a CPA over a year ago.
Yeah.
And there's no evidence. The CPA is just as absent as the lawyer. And quite frankly, the CPA.
I think we're dealing with one of those situations where he's just putting on different hats, and now I'm the lawyer, now I'm the CPA.
Well, it's that Trump thing. Trump did that, right? Where he was his own press secretary at one point. Somebody called his business, and he was
right.
Hi there, this is Donald Trump's press secretary. Um, but the CPA one then is really serious because that means he's been lying to Steve the entire time about having a CPA, and that means he also was lying about ever intending to pay Steve because he's like, well, the CPA is going to pay you. Where's the money going to come from?
Yeah.
And that means that this notion that any of the money was set aside for Steve, like he said, which also didn't make sense because a whole bunch of all the accounting that Kyle talked about when it came to how the money was being set aside, how it was going to be distributed, didn't make sense from an accounting point of view. No accountant would do it.
Yeah.
No accountant would do any of this without talking to Steve. And so what this means is, in my mind, Kyle never intended to pay Steve, probably going back over a year. It means he never tried to fix this, had any interest in fixing this. And to all his friends who have stood there and said, he's going to fix it, he's going to fix it, he was lying to you too. That is not a debatable point in my mind anymore. Now, Katie Paulson, of all people, came out a couple weeks ago and said, I think he's been lying to me and I think I can prove it. And she revealed a large number of DMs where he said things that were patently false. And Steve McRae had the evidence to prove it. That came out in a whole bunch of Twitter discussions. And she did a video in which she's admitted Kyle had been lying to her. She believed Kyle at the time, no longer did. And she thought he, by this point, she's been a co-host of NonSeq and kind of a darling of NonSeq. And her opinion is the money's gone and he's never had a lawyer. And that is all of the evidence, and just an insurmountable amount of evidence by this point says there's never been a lawyer, never been an accountant, and he never intended to pay Steve anything.
Yeah.
That's what I see. What was the question? So I apologize.
No problem. I was just gonna let you know. Stephen Potts said, "Yeah, the plaintiff does have to notify the business here in North Carolina. They won't just garnish your wages." So you were right about that one. Dave Thompson wants to know: is there any type of insanity defense that Kyle could use at this point? Kyle's disappointed mom says, "I can attest that Kyle
no, I don't want to hear from her.
was mentally damaged by people giving him money." um,
At least she didn't. I thought she was going to say something about us being mean to her son, but okay, no, that's good.
Apparently, yes, giving him money was very, very troubling for him.
Yeah, well, he may not have to worry about that too much longer. I'm feeling a little. The only reason, if you're sensing any, the thing is, I think people know this about me. I try to apply maximal charity at just about all times, and we've gone as far as we can with this. He has defaulted.
Yeah.
There is no way that anything he has ever told anybody in regards to this could possibly be true. And unless I'm saying I don't mean to speak for you, but this is.
Oh, I ran out of charity a long time ago.
Yeah.
It's to be. I mean, and I try to be a very charitable guy. But I ran out of charity a long time ago, and probably because I don't know, it's been a little difficult for me to maintain a level of separation on this one, because as somebody who has been through some kind of nasty crap with YouTube stuff like this, you know what I mean? Early on in something's conception, and I don't want to drag it up, but it's like I kind of know what it's like to have something like an idea, something that you work on just kind of snatched from you. The way it was with Steve. Now, the thing I worked on didn't get successful or anything like that. No problem. But still, it's frustrating. When I saw it happen, I immediately knew I had to rein myself in. But at this point, I've long exhausted my leash, so to speak, you know what I mean, well past what I can say is reasonable to continue granting charity. You know what I mean? It's there's too much. There's too much on so many different fronts, and even at first, I was very much one of these people that was in the camp. Well, you know, he probably never intended to do this. Probably just got out of hand. You know, he took a little bit more, and pretty soon he was taking more just to cover up that he had taken before. You know what I mean? But now, to be quite honest, in my mind, I have to wonder: did he ever did he ever intend on paying anyone but himself? Ever, from the beginning, you
The
know?
only time I think I read one email where he offered to give Steve a grand, but
Mhm.
Steve said, "I won't take that money unless it comes with the books." And he's like, "You owe me some money. I'd like to get the money, but I won't take it if you're." So Steve was like, "I want the books. I want the books. I want the books." And Kyle was like, "Oh, how about a grand?" I was like, "No, I want the books. I mean, yes, I want the grant too, but I want the books."
Right.
But the key there, and Kyle did later bring up that one. Now there were a couple. We've already discussed the times that Steve said,
Yeah.
"No, I don't want the money," and why. But for that particular issue, um, it was quite clear that Kyle was offering the money in exchange for shutting up about the books, and that was a red flag for Steve. And you could tell
I
he was
don't
just
think he
like,
ever kept the books is the problem. I don't think there were any
I
books to
think,
give. You know,
yeah.
I think that he was just very flying by the seat of his pants. Money came in, he did what he wanted with it. That he never kept any books, and so when Steve said, "Well, I want the books," he's like,
I'll pay you $1,000 not to ask that question again."
um,
Oh,
David Thompson says, "I wasn't trying to be funny. He supposedly has a medical condition. Could he argue temporary insanity made him make bad choices?"
the only medical condition I'm aware of, which was influencing his ability significantly too. So, right before this happened, he and I don't know how much of this he made public. I know he made some of it public, but so I got to be a little careful because I don't know how much he made public. But he had a health scare. It was not a mental health issue. It was a health scare, and he was under a tremendous amount of pressure. And that is one. If you see the video where the actual breakup happened, they say, "Look, we've been trying to contact you for weeks," and he's like, "Excuse me, but I've been under some serious stress from this medical scare." The last I heard, he was all cleared with it. Everything was came out okay, which is great. But one of the arguments that we had made too was, well, he was saying that that's why the meeting never happened, but they've been trying to meet with him for months. But at any rate, that would not influence this in any way. And again, that's why you have a lawyer. Here's the other thing: when he was served with the notice, which was served yesterday with the notice for filing of default, or a motion for default. He was served that at his house. I believe it was at his house. He was served. It was his home address, and it was given to him personally. If you have a lawyer, it doesn't need to be given to you. They just drop it off to the lawyer. That's why you can go out and do whatever you want. Nobody has to track you down. That's why they like it when you have a lawyer. He hasn't registered his lawyer with the court. But if he's sick, if he can't come into court, his lawyer tells the court that. If he doesn't have a if he's so sick he can't go to court and he doesn't have a lawyer, get a lawyer to tell the court that for you. There,
Yeah.
that there's no. Yeah. So I guess the last thing I'm sort of going to want to say on this is I think the evidence has been actually very clear. Listen, I started wearing this at one very specific time, and I have worn this for every stream, except for I think some of the other hangouts. I've worn this for every stream we've done since one particular time, which shall not be Odinson. You're not gonna. You know what the problem is? I can't like talk you down with a name like Odinson. How the fuck am I gonna do that? How the fuck am I gonna do that?
Certainly not by waving a ballpoint pen at my face.
Yeah, I guess I ain't gonna do it either. Is it? No, but one of the things I point out, I had done this whole thing on why I thought the money was gone, and it was clear to me the money was gone, and I stood by that.
Mhm.
But I had said too, he was buying $400 suits. I don't know what the price of the suits were. I was using hyperbole. Excuse me, it was Twitter. You don't always say suits that look like they're $400. I apologized for it and moved on. But since then, I've been Nick the $400 suitor, and that's fine. Uh, that was the only point anyone could refute there. And I stood by the fact, okay, I don't know there were $400. I'm telling you, the money's gone.
Yeah.
Um,
The money
so
is gone. The
uh,
money's absolutely gone.
and everybody has known that and I've talked to, and there have every lawyer I've talked to, some of them are Twitter lawyers, some of them are lawyers on YouTube, and some of them have never heard of any of this. And I just ran because when we talked about this the first day, fact patterns.
Mhm.
Lawyers deal with fact patterns, and the fact patterns are almost always the same. You take one look at this fact pattern, 90 to 95% chance, two things. One, the money's gone. Here's the other one we hadn't discussed, and I'm glad because I was going to forget it. Taxes haven't been paid. I
Yeah.
will I will pay dollars to donuts now. I have no evidence for it other than the fact pattern. I bet you that the taxes haven't been paid, not a dime. So he still may be in even more trouble because I
Okay.
will bet you if he hasn't done the accounting, how's he going to pay the taxes?
Yeah. So Kyle's mom says she may have found the books. She found some books under his mattress, but the pages were a little stuck together and there were no numbers, mostly pictures.
Mostly pictures. Okay, well, I thought she was going to find the books in Where's Waldo, but like, it's like,
Oh,
is
well.
that the books? Is that the books? But okay.
But
Yeah, I didn't need that imagery, Kyle's mom. Thank you, though.
on a serious note though, yeah, I one of the first things before we even talked about the non-sec thing, even behind even in the back, so to speak, is I never thought there were any books. You know, I kind of hate to be a dick about this one, but I looked into his past. I looked into the pattern of behavior that I saw developing over the non-sec thing, and no offense to any recovering addicts at all, none. But his current behavior fits not recovering addict behavior, but current addict behavior. Even if he's not currently using, he is displaying the addict pattern of using and acting almost sociopathic in the way that he treats the others around him.
Well, and that so 2 points. One, first of all, that Discord that he walked into got disturbing.
Hmm.
He started ranting on all sorts of different issues, Queen of England.
Wasn't he talking about like killing someone, and then the next
Well,
thing
he's
it
talking about
was not?
killing a lot of people, including all pundits, all yeah, any politicians who deny global warming. Then he was talking about killing the Queen of England. Then he said, no, actually, she's cool. It's not her fault. And then he got pushed back on that one. And then I think he ended with but it was a whole doggers. Um, that was, and then I think he said, he was like, well, then I think he was against space exploration. Why should we leave Earth to and try to colonize another place if the environment there is hostile and ours is livable? Why would we do that? Except we really should explore the planet because there could be unicorns on Io. You don't know. And
um,
as a philosopher, that was it had the distinction of being an argument I'd never heard before. Um, Yeah, and I mean, I think people have noticed some very strange behavior, and I'm not going to get into it. You can find it
yeah,
on YouTube. Some strange behavior in other casts that he had done, and people have been very concerned about him. But I
I'm
think,
concerned about him. The things that I say, my feelings on this subject don't change. That I kind of feel bad for him. You know what I mean? To me, this is a man's life and tragedy, so to speak.
you
He seems to be self-destructing before our eyes, and just when he was kind of pulling himself out of self-destruction, and he just is repeating that pattern of self-destruction. It's kind of sad.
it is, and the thing is, he's immensely charming, and I think
Hmm.
everybody wants to like him. And I think there are some people who, when they see that level of charm, immediately think, "I'm suspicious of that." I'm not one of them. I'm usually the one who's just like, "Ah, I really like this guy." I have to admit, when he said, Nick was the kind of guy I used to respect, I was like, "Oh man, I feel kind of hurt by that." I was like, "Yeah, I know I'm a good liar, but you really got to go there with me?" I was like, but I try to be fair, dude. But I wanted to point out one other thing, which because I wanted to say this, it was actually when you and I first discussed doing this, and we were ambivalent about it. On In Time, we do want to cover smaller stories that affect the community. This is probably as small as we'd want to get. We don't want to necessarily get into somebody stole somebody's bicycle, but this affects a lot of people. This is still a big story. It affects a lot of people we know, so we covered it. But when you and I were first talking about it, you had done some research. I had done the same research.
Yeah.
Um, but I had sort of said, well, what I really think happened was because we know for a fact that he spent some of the money and then told Steve after the fact that he had done it.
Hmm.
And I had said, well, he did that. And then once you've done that, and once Steve said, it's okay, man, I understand, then you get the taste for it, just like you said. And then you spend a little more and a little more. And you probably at first spend it mostly on the show. And there's lots of, the show production qualities go up and then it goes away and goes away. It gets ahead of you. And then you said, no, I think this is just the kind of guy he is.
I think I said
And
that.
I
Yeah,
remember,
yeah.
I remember this was before we did our very first story on it. I was just like, well, Ansgar, I'm going to have to agree to disagree with you on that one. I think it just got away from him. I remember secretly thinking, yeah, there's at least a 50-50. You're right, but I'm gonna side with Hope. And I think you pegged it early on. But the other thing I'd like to add. Oh yes, please.
Oh no, no, no! I was just clearing my throat. Go, please.
And I think because I think we've covered just about all that we needed to cover now, except for I guess sort of one last thing,
Mhm.
which is I do think Steve McRae, they call him the assholey pope of or a holy pope,
Agnosticism.
yeah,
Yes.
a holy pope of agnosticism. Uh, there is absolutely no question that he can be very uh, what was the word I was looking for? I had the perfect word, and then
Assholey.
certainly abrasive. Asshole is probably the best word. I was going to say abrasive, Ansgar. Just keep in mind, given his batting average on lawsuits, let's try not to get our asses sued by this guy.
But well,
Um,
I mean, I think that Steve is a very self-aware assholey pope,
I,
and knows that he's kind of assholey at times, and kind of embraces that.
yeah, I was gonna say he may take this segment and just play. That'll be his new intro on. He's an asshole. Um, but I do. Well, listen, I'm going to tell you. I think it costs him more than he's aware. It costs him, and I think that's unfortunate because he's a brilliant fucking guy,
Yeah,
and he's also a really good guy. If you get to know him, which admittedly some people are like, I don't want to get to know this asshole. But I
he's a
will
very good
say
guy.
this: he absolutely is, and I stand by that judgment. No fucking problem there. I will say this: he's called out a lot of people. Sometimes maybe it was a good idea. Sometimes maybe not quite as much a good idea. And he's been abrasive about it sometimes, gotten into a lot of arguments over it. I understand why there are a lot of people really quite fucking pissed at him about a lot of this shit. Some of this I think, had to do to get this done. I was against him going public with all this. He went public with it. I said, okay, fine. You've gone public with it. Make the best of it. I think the only reason this worked was because he went public with it. So I was wrong on that one, too. There's going to be a list of all the shit I called wrong on this one. But I do think that he's pissed off a lot of people, and I get that. But I think there are a large number of people in this community who have given him a hard time regarding this. And the fact is, most people were pretty clear early on. About half the people I talked to said secretly in DMs, they'd be like, I think maybe the money's gone already. And so I don't think it was very hard. And we put together on our first show, as fair as possible and with as much charity as possible, something that reached the conclusion that was very hard to draw the conclusion, other than he didn't have a lawyer and that he wasn't taking this seriously and that this was a shit show, that he was fucking Steve over. So this isn't a huge guess, and this is where we are now. It's done. There's going to be, we'll probably drop in 3 minutes if and when there's a judgment filed, or not the judgment, the award filed, whether or not he got the channel back, what he gets back, and that's it. And that's 3 minutes. That's all that is, not even.
Yeah,
And that's it. It's done. Which I'm actually kind of glad for, because boy, do I want to move on to
it's kind
other
of put.
things.
It's a kind of nice to put that this chapter behind us.
Yeah, but anybody who really uh, laid into Steve or gave Steve a hard time on this particular issue are the people who really defended Kyle to the hilt, and people who said, and in my mind, put their reputation on the line by saying, you will be paid back. You will. These are declarative statements. Now, admittedly, these are statements that you sometimes make for a friend or whatever, but they're not like, "I think you'll get paid back." They're not. You're saying this is what's gonna. I am telling you this is what's gonna. And there are plenty of people who said that, and not just that. I'm not trying to just. I'm not just trying to. There are people who are thinking probably. I've got a few. Just I mean everybody who's really sat there and said, "Steve, you don't know what happened. You don't." I think a lot of people have to take a good close long, hard look in the mirror because this has been pretty clear to a lot of people for a long time. And the fact that he defaulted, didn't
Mhm.
even try to defend it, this wasn't close. This wasn't even close. It's done before it even started.
I need to
And I think
defend you here for a second. Mind Onion says, in time, against going public on it, create show to air it publicly. Um, you know, we didn't create this
well,
show for the purpose of airing non-sex stuff publicly. In fact, when we didn't even have we actually debated amongst each other whether or not to even cover non-sec. We had already had the show idea. It was already in the works. We were already developing assets for it when before we'd ever even talked once about the whole non-sec thing. And we had there was at least a week where we were determined that Nick was just going to do this privately on his own channel. And we weren't going to make a big thing of it. And we sort of eventually decided that no, this is a big enough thing among the circle of audience and the kind of people that we will likely draw. And so there was almost a reason to air it on our show, and it had already gone public by then. So, you know,
and once it's public, what is to be gained by ignoring it?
right?
My advice was to, and it was going to be public that this was happening. I didn't think that people's names should be dragged through the mud, which, by the way, we didn't do.
Hmm.
Now I'm willing to say things a lot harsher than we've done up until then, but
No,
we certainly, I was really against airing all the laundry publicly.
apparently it was a
But
joke.
what
I
ended
didn't
up
read well, by the way. Just a joke.
Um, what ended up happening was by doing this, it applied pressure to Kyle, and I think that's part of what helped Steve get the funding, and it's a large part of what I think was able to drive this forward. It was the fact that it was done publicly. So
Yeah.
at any rate, I do think um, that he's probably owed a number of apologies from a number of sources. It's not up to me to. I hope to see that forthcoming because I think, and again, not to say that Steve hasn't, you know, I can understand why people are pissed at him, but if eh, I think, well, he's been through a lot, and I think this strikes me as pretty much complete vindication, 100%,
Well,
unless I'm missing something.
I will say something before I'm sure we're about to wrap up here.
Yeah.
I think this has been a tragedy on many levels. I think that Steve has felt in many ways backed into a corner with no other recourse but to take this publicly. I think it has led to a whole lot of stresses and even interpersonal stresses that have destroyed relationships, fractured communities. The effects of this falling out will be being felt within these circles and communities and friends for who knows how long, maybe forever, you know. And I think it's personally sad. I think that there was something really interesting and kind of magical that had been built around the whole non-sex show thing. And not only is that gone, but it has left this sort of this treadmill of animosity and hate and people calling others out, and it's been gross, it's been horrible, and I really hope that eventually this can all be put behind.
I hope so. I think it's going to take some time. I don't know, and I hope that whatever happens, Kyle finds a way to have a life that he's comfortable with and wants to be living. I can't imagine it's always being at the center of these kinds of difficulties, but whatever
Hey
happens, I think
Steve, by the
he's going to have
way,
some reckoning too.
good to see you, man. He just showed up.
Oh, is he in our chat? Yeah, Steve,
Yes.
we're having a show about you, just FYI. Um, I'm giving him a hard time. I was on the back end on the GDC, so I saw him there, although I didn't get a chance to read what he was saying. I was probably sitting there going, who put these two clowns on the air? But, all right. Well, yeah, no, actually, I think that about covers it. So, thank you all for watching. Like I said, this is probably our last show on it. I imagine there's
Mhm.
going to be a time where we're going to want to say, hey, look, this is what happened with the channel and whatnot, because he'll be getting a judgment at some point. We don't know when. I don't think there's anything else to cover. This is it. I think it's done.
Yeah.
The last is the wrap up. So thank you all for bearing with us on this and for joining us. And we hope you will also join us on our channel on In Time Show and subscribe there. We're going to have tomorrow a discussion on the impeachment of President Trump. We have Dr. Misha Griffin, ProLib, and I think one or maybe both of the guys from Problem Solver Politics. And then Tuesday, I think we have on 604 Atheist. And then a week from tomorrow, we have Aaron Ra to discuss his deconversion, which I'm certainly looking forward to. I don't know.
All
Is there
sounds
anything
like
else?
amazing shows. No, I think that's it. Thank you guys. Once again, thank you so much. 1,000 subs. That is huge. Thank you for the support. Thanks for coming out. Thanks for watching us. It really means the world to me that there are people who actually give a crap about what we have to say. Seriously. So,
Absolutely.
so much love for everybody, and we will see you on the next show.
I don't.